27.
26.
25 seconds.
24. 23.
22 seconds.
21 seconds.
20 seconds.
19.
18.
17 seconds.
16.
15 seconds.
14.
13 seconds.
12.
11.
10 seconds. 9.
8.
7.
6.
What?
Copy.
5 seconds.
3, 2,
1.
Welcome to Sauce-Based Chatter, the show that used to be called the Scotch Tracker. We've got some new hosts joining us today, so I wondered if everyone can firstly introduce yourselves. You want to go first, Vanessa?
Yeah, hi, my name is Vanessa, and I do a YouTube channel called I Love Bad Star Trek.
Scott?
Hi, I'm Scott, host of the YouTube channel Opinions No One Cares About.
I'm Dustin, host of the Best of Trek, Worst of Trek channel here on YouTube.
And I'm Brad, and I have no YouTube channel whatsoever.
Oh,
Yeah, you get that.
And I'm extremely thankful you can all join the show today.
Thanks,
Today
yeah.
we'll boldly
Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely.
Today we'll boldly start. We'll boldly go into discussing the upcoming Star Trek show, Strange New Worlds. Although the series hasn't launched yet, today we'll be discussing what it might be like. So, an initial question: how do you think Pike, Spock, and Una will be portrayed?
well, I think we've already seen a good charge of it in Discovery's season 2 and in the short treks, and they are really three characters that stack up well to the classic big three of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy.
Agreed.
Very true.
I'm really
Are you-
looking forward to seeing how their chemistry plays out on screen.
So, do you think it will be much the same as it's been in Discovery?
I hope not.
That's interesting.
Oh, just
Agreed.
as far as those three characters. Yes, actually, I hope
Yeah.
so. Just for those three.
All right. Okay. Regarding
I'm
other
looking-
characters, are you glad to see Uhura, Chapel, and the manga in the show? Or aside from Pike, Spock, and Duna, would you prefer it all new characters to the main cast?
No, I think I'm looking forward to seeing Chapel, how they're going to flesh out Nurse Chapel, and I'm really looking forward to seeing some of the characters that were hinted at or were kind of presented in the original pilot sequence of the original series. It should be fun.
I think it would be a really nice, awesome callback if we find out that Una is the sister of Nurse Chapel, just as a nod to Majel Barrett.
Yeah. I heard somebody was talking about how they liked how they're taking the bold move of taking Nurse Chapel and giving her a personality. I think that's going to be fun to explore, as well as Una, because it would have been super progressive if they'd started off the show with a female first officer.
Yep,
now we
that's
get that.
one of the biggest disservices we've ever had in Star Trek.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I really appreciated about Star Trek from the 1960s till today is if we look at the way the series, the different series present the times in which they are created, we could look from an anthropological perspective and see the progression, the changing of attitudes toward gender roles or toward the relationship between men and women. It's of course racial identity and conflict and there's so many ways that we could track the changing attitudes over time. I really appreciate that. So for me, it's going to be fun to see how Nurse Chapel was originally presented, and then how they're going to flesh her out, and then we can see between those two characters that vast difference in attitudes about women, right, as they're portrayed in movies and film, TV.
So do you think, like, if there had been like an all new cast of characters that was representing, or that was actually the main cast, that there might have been like missed opportunities there, like, because you wouldn't have been able to see like such a comparison, or for any other reason?
I mean, like doing this show, I think the point of it was to sort of flesh out this sort of unrealized story, this sort of like, okay, we're just supposed to forget that that cast existed and that crew existed from the pilot to this. So it's really great that we finally get to see what those characters are capable of.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Dan, is what you were saying before, like if we had a Strange New Worlds captained by Robert April and just a whole cast of people we really don't know at all?
Wow, they're gonna go way back.
So, what did you say? You don't know at all?
I was just trying to clear up the question that you asked. Did you mean that, like, if we saw a version of the show with like Robert April and a bunch of other characters we don't know at all? Is that what you were kind of saying?
Well, we sort of do know Robert April to an extent because he's been in the show.
One episode of TAS.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
just meant like all new characters.
Yeah, I do think that would have been it would be a missed opportunity, right? To create brand new is great. It's fresh and and you start from scratch. But if you're going to recapture an era, that's already been referenced many times, you need anchor points. And the anchor points don't just allow you to, as a frame of reference, it allows you to flesh out some characters that were glossed over, that were unrealized, right? As you were saying. And if they didn't do that, yes, I would say that would have been a missed opportunity. But it's all about choices, right? It's just choices that you make as a creative. So I'm just glad that they're taking this direction.
So one of those
and especially
connections... Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Dan, go ahead. Especially like at the end of season 2 of Discovery, you see Spock, he shaved the beard, he's on the bridge of the Enterprise with Pike. I think everybody wanted to see where that was going to go. So I'm really glad, they decided to take a spinoff in that direction. And if you have some old characters mixed in with some new, it really helps.
I thought it was interesting what Akiva Goldsman was saying, like that he initially thought that Discovery was going to be a show that involved like Pike's adventures with the Enterprise, and it turned out not to be. But then he thought, well, maybe like that's the show we should be doing. And then by the end of season 1, like they introduced the Enterprise, and then Pike, Spock, Una, all there on like season 2, like slowly but surely progressing in that direction. But I thought it was an interesting behind-the-scenes sort of video that he did. One of the connections to the past will be Laan Noonien Singh. How do you think her, or how would you like her connection to Khan to be portrayed?
I'd like it not to be. Just keep it a mystery.
I think they're probably gonna reference at some point, right? There's gonna be some passing reference. They have to in order to make it clear. There's gonna be some passing reference to history and the family kind of stuff that's gone on before, and I hope that's all they do, right? Just so that they make that connection clear, that it's there, and they leave it a mystery, as Dustin was saying, that they give us the opportunity to let it kind of ferment in our minds, and then that will inform how the character is portrayed throughout the first season.
But I am cognizant of the fact that they're not going to bring a character with the last name Noonien Singh into it without bringing up all the augment stuff. There's no way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it turned out she like, what if, she's obviously an augmented human, part of Khan's gang, who somehow survived everything and joined Starfleet as a way to try and find the sleeper ship they were originally on in Space Seed. And honestly, I hope I'm not right, because that's just too obvious.
I just really want a sung and sing sitcom, family sitcom,
Right.
to come out of this. That is really that's best case scenario.
Like, I know that Roddenberry was
Little
interested
variety
in
hour.
finding a person that he'd served with, and that's why those names were used and chosen. But I don't know, if any connection was finally made.
It never was.
Funny.
He never found him.
Yeah, I thought that. But I thought it might be funny, if there was a relative or something nowadays that, because of Leanne Nooney finally came forward and said, I knew my relative was the person who served with Roddenberry. It would be pretty interesting. The alien-looking human cult from the Discovery two-parter Such Sweet Sorrow hasn't been announced as returning for this show. Would you like to have seen her as a main character in Strange New Worlds or not? I'm not sure. Do you know who I'm speaking about?
Yeah, I do, but she's just kind of such a background character that it's like, great. Returning faces are always nice.
Mm-hmm.
What I'd really like to know is what happened to, I can't remember her name from that short trek where Pike is put in the room with her and she almost kills him.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about? Yes. And they said originally when that had aired that they were going to bring that character into Strange New Worlds, but she's not in the main cast list.
But I thought it's interesting that they've announced James T. Kirk will be in the second season. Maybe it'll be the same with her character.
Maybe?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm woefully behind. I haven't watched any short treks.
Do you think we should see Pike in any of the uniform styles from the original series or the TOS movies?
Oh, please. Let's put him in the very early days TOS things, with the felt and the little bric-a-brac on the collars and the sleeves. Please let us do that. I need that for me.
I think it would be absolutely hilarious to make a modernized the motion picture uniform and stick him in it just for one episode for fun.
Just don't explain it.
What's up with the big hair? Anson Mount's hair is got to be at least 7 inches high.
Oh, when we first see him riding the horse?
No. On the bridge, he's got this bouffant thing happening. It's up there.
It is pretty up there, yeah.
It doesn't. A lot of the characters have this kind of very, very stylistic kind of choices with their hair fashion. But man, it would. I don't know the kind of product that they would have to use. You'd have to have a cabinet just for all that product.
Starfleet Command probably told them, look, if you're coming back, you can have the hair or the beard, but not both.
There you go. That's right.
I thought it was interesting, really, recently watching the second season of Discovery and seeing his hair gets progressively grayer throughout the season.
Oh, does it?
Well, it's a lot of stress.
There's been a news story going about the actress Celia, I think that's her first name, Gooding, who plays Uhura, point blank refused. She really didn't want to wear a wig in the role of Uhura.
Fair enough.
Cause people. Well, I thought it was interesting to read the comments to that news story as well, because people were saying why is that? Because she would be visually closer to Nichelle's Uhura if she had worn a wig.
Oh yeah, with the bouffant hairdo.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she's a younger version of that character.
Yeah. So
right? Why can't you change your hairstyle?
Yeah.
Sure.
I don't think the point of reviving a character is to do a perfect impression of what's already there.
Yeah.
I think to like portray somebody younger, you have license to sort of go about it. And also I think we need to focus a lot, the folks in general need to focus a lot less on how woman's hair looks, just generally.
Well, I thought it was similar to like the Enterprise. Like if you depict an earlier stage of its evolution, then you've got that room to like for evolution to occur, which I thought was a cool idea, and which like not many people seem to be realizing that like the Discovery version of the Enterprise, when it was designed for Discovery or redesigned, like the intention was that it would go through like multiple refits before it actually appears on the original series, and people were like, well, why does it not look the same?
Yeah, it makes sense. The Enterprise has already been through 2 5-year missions plus however long Robert April was aboard before Kirk takes command.
So there's been promotional material like advertising, dribbles, and like the Guardian of Forever being promotion for Strange New Worlds. Would you like to see them make a comeback?
In both cases, yes.
Yeah, why not? The Guardian forever be taking human form again? Because we can definitely go for that.
I just hope it doesn't mean that they're just redoing the episode. I hope that there's like references to it, which is cute for the fans, but I just don't I'm nervous that they're just gonna remake the episode. I hope that's not the case.
So Pike can't travel back in time and fall in love with someone who absolutely has to die.
No.
That's just how I date. That's just
the discussions I noted, the questions I noted down have come to an end. But there was one question I was thinking of. I can't remember.
What can I ask a question, Dan?
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
So what do you think I know we talked about it before the video started, but what do you think the benefit is going to be to having an episodic approach to the series? So we just talk about that a second. What's the benefit versus the way it's been done recently in Picard and Discovery?
Well, I think a lot of people have been bemoaning the pace at which the stories told in like Picard season 2 and Discovery season 4 have been presented, and I think like by making it episodic, then it's easier, just to tune into one episode, and you don't have sort of perhaps the same problems with pacing of the narrative. So that's season-long arc.
What I'm hoping.
So go ahead.
What I'm hoping that it brings is fans that don't just dump on the whole season just because one episode's bad. Because now we can go back to, all right, well, 1 or 2 episodes of the season are going to be bad. There's never been a perfect Trek season ever. And hopefully fans can actually start just building up and focusing on those episodes that are really good.
Oh, yeah. And plus, there's the whole thing with character development. You get more time you can have more time to flesh out like a particular character in a singular episode, as opposed to like all the times in Discovery when you get the whole overarching backstory going on, and then once in a while a character will stop and drop some exposition about their background, which is fine, but it's kind of fleshing them out piecemeal. And especially with Discovery, it's got some great characters. You need more time to get a fuller sense of who they are.
I'm not convinced that one type of storytelling is necessarily superior over another, but I think with an episodic approach, we can sort of have it be a given that something completely different is going to happen, that we're not expecting the episode before to necessarily carry through in the next thing, that it's going to be a fresh new thing each time. And I think that keeps it, that for some may keep it much more exciting.
I think also you have got like more potential for there to be like different tones in the episode, because then you can more easily like have comedic ones and stuff like that. 'Cause I
Right.
remember like Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad in Discovery season 1, and yet like the whole rest of the season basically is significantly darker than that one. I would think. I would say.
Well,
Yeah, I
when
was
you
just
have that,
thinking,
no, go ahead, Scott.
oh yeah, I was just thinking like what Dan said. I don't like people, talking about going back and watching particular episodes. I can't really imagine, like if I think about it, doing that with most of the seasons of Discovery or Picard, because you have the whole backstory that kind of takes front and center. But like I would go back for Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad, because I'm kind of a sucker for time loops.
I was just going to say that I think with the sequential narrative that we're seeing in not, and again, it's not saying one is superior to the other. It's just what's an advantage of doing it episodically.
Gotcha.
Right. So with the season long story arc, you can't really pop out one episode and say, okay, I'm just going to watch this in isolation, because there are things that happen before and things that are carried on and afterwards. So you have to watch it sequentially, but episodically you can, jump around and see things and still follow the characters. Right.
But I think also like you no longer have the what was a big plus back in the day, sort of when there was Berman track, where it was to do with the syndication and what was going to be airing on TV, and I don't think that's as much of a concern as it was like in the 90s. Right.
So the flip of that is, what's the disadvantage of taking it episodically, right? So anyone want to jump on that? What would be the disadvantage?
It would be really difficult to world build if you're completely encapsulating everything sealed into one episode where nothing can really be referenced, and relationships. It would be really difficult to grow them over time and have them have their moments and have things build. Like, for example, in Deep Space Nine, the Dominion War built over that entire series.
True, right.
True. And with an episodic, that's a really difficult thing. That's why I think TNG was bookended with 2 and 3 parters, because you can't really have like a meaningful battle or big event if it's just going to be. I mean, you can make great episodes, but it's difficult to tell like a story if you're going to do it in just one piece.
So the backstory, the conflict, or the bigger arc of the story still exists, even though, as in Deep Space Nine, you'd have an episode that was self-contained in the context of a character's journey, but they would still have the Dominion War as something that was happening in behind, so you still anchor it in time, in sequence.
Yep. Or I'm also thinking about like the Xindi arc in season 3 of Enterprise, where like I think like one of the most popular episodes of that entire season was like Twilight, where it's like referencing in like using an alternate timeline to reference the ongoing situation which the viewers are aware of. Like you don't have that necessarily that pretext, that context, if you can't allow season long storytelling, or it's harder at least.
The promotional material I had seen said that that there were going to be individual episodes, but they were going to be working towards season-long arcs as well. So maybe it is going to be more like DS9.
Oh, I hope so.
Yeah, which is not a bad choice. It's not a bad direction to go in. The later kind of seasons, right?
Yeah. Now, on the other side of that, we were talking about having it hard to do backstory and characters when you're just doing episodic format. The one thing that comes to mind the most is that one where Uhura loses her entire memory, and then the next episode she's just right back at her post. Nothing
Right.
happened.
But is she though? Because I've seen like online speculation recently, like the reason that she can't remember or apparently doesn't know Klingon and has to look up it in books in the undiscovered country is because of that incident with Nomad. Is like obviously a speculation. It's not in canon, but yeah.
It's hard to believe that when that's the last thing bookending her entire franchise appearance, when there's nothing else in between that would, corroborate that. But that's just me.
Right. So there's potential for some issues to arise if you approach it episodically. If the showrunners or the people who are paying attention, the dramaturges of the series, don't pay attention to those little details. They have to make sure that there's weaving in, right, where there's everything stitched together fairly well, or consistency between the episodes, right? Continuity, I guess, would be a better term for it.
I was
Yeah,
wondering,
that was definitely like a thing that's very glaring in things like Voyager, where it's like the ship is obviously like in a lot of trouble and really broken, and things are exploding, and then even in the next scene, fine. The next episode never happened.
It has been sort of, for lack of a better word, derided for that occasionally, but in my own experience, having occasionally watched Voyager, I have been occasionally surprised by how much continuity there actually is and gets forgotten about often. I was wondering if you think like 10 episodes are too much or too little.
It's become the norm now, isn't it? 8-10 episodes is the norm for a season.
Yeah, I'd like to say too little, but at the same time, with all the other plethora of Treks that we've got rolling out sequentially through the year, and now we've just got Trek constantly, 10's probably fine.
Yeah, but can you do 10? Can you do in 10 episodes with an episodic feel but an overarching backstory at the same time, or is that asking like too much to put into a season so small?
Yeah, will they have enough distance over those 10 episodes to really flesh out some of those characters if we're talking about episodic kind of content? So I'd be leaning toward too short myself. I think maybe a 14 show or a 12. That's not too much more, but I just, maybe 24 is too much, 23 is too much nowadays. But I would say 10 is a little bit too short for me.
In episodic Trek, I think it might be a little short, but man, after this past season of Disco, I am really glad they're cutting that back to 10, because they could have told the last story in like 5.
Yeah.
I just think it leaves absolutely no wiggle room for like a really bad episode. Like that's my entire channel is just talking about the bad stuff, and it's like there's a lot of padding when you have like a few extras, and it's like, okay, this one's bad, but then there's like the vast majority of it is pretty great. With 10, you're sort of like you got to keep it lean and mean.
Yeah.
And yeah,
because 3 bad episodes really tank the season. Right? No one's going to really talk about, because that's a third.
Yeah.
Right? No one's going to say, oh, that was a successful season if you have a third of your episodes that are crap.
Yeah.
Oh, at the same time, if you go back to a lot of past Trek, probably a third of the episodes in at least some seasons are not good.
True, but a third over 22 or 21 episodes,
exactly.
It gives you 14
10,
versus 7, right? So it gives you more content that's satisfying as opposed to 7, which would be not good.
Well, they've had 3 years to produce this, so
yeah, right.
What was that, Scott?
Yeah, I'm never going to complain about a season of Star Trek that has 23 episodes.
So do you think like Discovery and the original series basically is all that should be referenced, or do you think like would you like to see like reference made to like Enterprise, Star Trek Enterprise, and other, you know,
Or even just setting up stuff for the future Star Treks.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Harry Mudd better come back.
anything that predates, you know, chronologically, I think should be open source material for these potentially for these series or for this series, right? It has to be.
And what do you feel about like there being in the medical division like at least 2 uniform styles with Chapel and Bank out there?
Man.
Huh. You know, that's a fair point. I mean, are they meant to distinguish between like doctor and nurse? Because I mean, technically they're both in medical. Why not just both wear blue?
That's how it was in the original series, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep, blue, all blue.
But is the but it was white. Wasn't it white in the movie? Or am I misremembering?
Yes, in the motion picture, Chapel, when she becomes an MD, is wearing white.
Mhm.
So could be
And
a
then it's all
nod.
Monster Maroons.
Could be a nod to that kind of connection.
Interesting.
Do you think there's going to be as much? Because a lot of the online chatter about Discovery, Discovery again of a successful series, a successful franchise component for Star Trek. There's been a lot of chatter about the kind of the military structure of the ship and the organization of the crew and kind of the breakdown of some of that kind of order that was established in previous episodes. Do you think that's an issue that we'll continue to see in Brave New Worlds? Will they continue to play with
Strange
New
Worlds?
Yeah, Strange New Worlds. Do you think there'll be any of the similar kind of issues, or will they just kind of stick to a very rigid structure that honestly I think Pike brought when he was in season 2? He had a bit more of a firmness to him and to those episodes. So what do you guys think about that?
Well, I hope he's a little different just because of his experience with the time crystal, and we've already seen in the promos that he's dealing with that he knows he's going to die thing.
One thing that I always look for in Star Trek is any analyzation, any sort of breakdown as to why the Starfleet is a military organization. I always look for that. I hope that they dissect that and actually examine as to why that is. If it was purely exploratory, why are they so heavily armed? I really do hope that is somehow looked at.
I think that particular point was answered really well in the first real episode of season 4 of Enterprise, when they get home and Archer's dealing with his PTSD on the mountain with Columbia's captain. And he's like, yeah, we needed all those weapons and then some. He didn't want them either.
It's true.
Yeah, just like the philosophical approach of just heading out into the yonder with the military organization and everything. Like, what kind of message does that send to the people that we meet along the way? I think that would be a good thing for the show to look at. I don't know if they can fit it into that 10 episode place with all this plates that they're spinning, but
Well, you reminded me of, I can't remember the name of it, but there's a Discovery episode where there's like a colony under attack and by Klingons, and then Discovery is there and fights off the Klingons, and all the colonists are like, "Yay!"
Who was that? That was the that was Lorca, wasn't it? Lorca's
Yep. Yeah,
discovery.
Mhm.
They jumped
Season
in
one.
to
Yeah.
be the heroes.
Yep.
But for me, it's not so much that they're armed, because you go off into the mountains for a hike. You better take bear spray with you. You better be prepared. And I would hope they could flesh out that topic as well, because what were the decisions and why, and how has it moved from Enterprise into the later episode or later series. But for me, it's like the structure on the ship. Like one of the things that bothered me in Discovery was when Tilly was promoted to second in command, even though she was at a much lower rank than others in the chain of command. And that created a discontinuity between my understanding of the earlier episode or earlier series and then Discovery. And I was wondering if they were going to kind of continue to play with that kind of almost, it almost seemed, I understand from the story why it happened and from what they were trying to create in the episode. But from a organizational standpoint, from a procedural standpoint, would that actually happen on a vessel that requires a chain of a command or a sequence of procedures to be followed to ensure continuity of kind of rule following or order following, So that was what I was getting at. Are they going to continue to play with some of those looser kind of structural approaches to command, or will it return to a more traditional, let's say, type of organization within the crew? I know my preference, but I don't know. Does anyone else ever have a thought about that?
No, because Tilly's really the only use of that. You know what I mean? I don't remember any other time that a lower ranked officer was put up to the level of captain or commander for more than just 5 minutes.
Okay. Well, there were other moments in the show where things happened that were kind of startling to me. But yeah, okay. I would just hope that they have a better, or rather, they would return to a more traditional kind of structure that had already been established in previous series, so that it wasn't so glaring and kind of broke with continuity.
I always thought it was interesting when one of the female characters is referred to as Mr. Savick. But I understand that that has similarly military
connection,
history,
naval protocol.
Yeah.
Is anyone else looking forward to seeing the Ainu? No, sorry, Anar.
Yeah, I guess.
Hammer, yeah.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to, because we already have the Andorians really, really stitched together nicely from Enterprise, right?
Yeah.
And then a couple of references in original series, but we don't know much about about Hammer's offshoot, right, of the Andorians. So it's going to be fun. I'm wondering though about the makeup in previous series. They didn't have such, chiseled and squared structures that we've seen over Discovery, and we're going to be seeing.
It kind of looks like Giga Chad. It kind of looks like just very huge chin, very very Giga Chad to me. But what I really enjoyed about the Enterprise Andorians was the articulate antenna.
Yeah.
They were very expressive.
Yeah.
And I was when they came up again on Discovery, I'm like, man, they made them You know,
Yeah.
made him stay still again.
I-
Like, why?
I heard
Right.
apparently they weren't going to do the Andorians in the Enterprise at all if they weren't able to do the antennae to move.
Mhm.
I'd say I am actually really looking forward to Hemmer. TNG was my first series, so I'm totally down with having a blind engineer. I am hoping the writers remember that he's not the fact that he's blind, obviously, but that his other senses are accelerated. Because I can just see like a deluge of comments coming down every episode if there's something that happens when he's around. He's like, well, how come Hemmer didn't pick up on that with his senses? Just really hoping they pay attention to that.
Yeah.
I thought it's great that they actually cast an actor who's blinder, at least hard of seeing.
I'm actually looking forward to having a main character, or maybe a recurring character that's kind of different visually, right? I know we've had the Bajorans, we've had the Cardassians, and I would almost like to see some of the more alien races be represented.
Like a non-corporeal, where it's like a light or a thought or smell or something like that.
Not one of those.
Tholians.
Oh, okay.
A Medusan?
Well, in Discovery they introduced some other characters that were quite visually different, very striking. So I'd almost like to see some of the characters they presented in the animated series. Even some of those would be, or Lower Decks. What's the name of the doctor? What race is she?
I was just about to say we need a live action Cation.
Yeah. So wouldn't that be a nice addition?
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you could figure out a way to do it with the prosthetics that make it realistic.
They actually did that in the one with the whales. It's one of the background races standing in the gallery there.
Yeah, on the Federation Council.
Yep.
That's a lot of makeup for a background character.
Yeah.
I think I'm guessing like Larry Nemechek probably would like there to be a visit to the Tellarite homeworld. He's always talking very passionately about his love for Tellarite.
You know what? I wouldn't mind seeing a Tellarite.
Yeah, absolutely.
That belligerent kind of character.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the character is, and he has to work to kind of modify. And it's a different kind of belligerence than Klingon.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So that would have been. I would think that would be a fun one to have as a recurring character.
And can we give some explanation to why in both Prodigy and Discovery this past season, the Tellarites are now like explorers on sleeper ships? Where that just started? I would like to know more about that.
Yeah.
But I think Tellarites would work well with like the I was thinking it probably depends on the chronology of what aliens you see, I think, to a certain extent. Because like with Prodigy and stuff like that, yeah, it's certain in the Delta Quadrant. I think like not only do you have to like pay heed to the political interactions between different species and different races, but also like just like which ones like the Federation are encountering.
Yeah, there's an established chronology of interactions, right? But I think that's what Pike needs. Pike needs a Tellarite drinking buddy.
Thank you.
That would make for some nice kind of comic moments.
Yeah.
Good call.
Was really excited to see was the Jadzia like dated somebody, and they only mentioned it in passing where they're like, oh, he had like an exposed brain.
Yeah, transparent dome. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Galamite.
Yeah, I was really hoping for that to be a thing.
I think even though, like I was saying about like chronology and stuff like that, which I think it would be cool to see like aliens like this early in the timeline that you haven't seen until later in the timeline. Like I just thought about the Lurians that have been on recently in Discovery and obviously with Morn and Deep Space Nine.
Mm-hmm.
But if they like introduced one this early, or if they'd done the same, I guess, with Enterprise, I think that may have been cool, because I think you can do that with any species where, you know, there isn't a set first contact was made at such a date, and therefore like the fans are like, well, what are you doing to introduce them this early in the chronology? They're supposed to not meet the Federation until later.
Right.
Like what happens, I guess, I think, with the Ferengi and with the Borg and Enterprise.
Regeneration. Yeah.
Yeah. An acquisition. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, must be.
I'd actually be really surprised if we didn't see a Lurian, since we've seen one in every single new series.
But then would there be potential for a story arc involving them that allows for the justification of the Allurians in every single series, right? Is there something bigger that could be touched on?
Ooh.
I think it's interesting.
Opportunities are available to do those kinds of things.
I think it's interesting that, as far as we know, like the main cast of Strange New Worlds doesn't. It's mostly seems to be mostly humans, apart from the Enar. I'm forgetting anyone.
Spock.
Yeah, of course.
Mhm.
And
But,
in
you know,
theory, Lon is an augment, but still human.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting. Like there are no new alien species introduced in the main cast, because I think like when they did that with Discovery and did that with Saru, then fans are potentially like, well, how come we don't see them later in the timeline, or with Phlox, with the Denobulans?
That's a race we need to go back to. We have not had enough Denobulans on screen.
I like they returned in Lower Decks.
Didn't they say something in the original series about, or in that era, maybe it was novelizations, or maybe it was some of the novels that were created, but wasn't there? It was in contrast to IDIC, infinite diversity, infinite combinations,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
right? There was something about ships being populated or crewed by single cultures or by single races, because they worked more efficiently together.
That happened with the Vulcan ship. There was like the Vulcan ship that was destroyed or something, and
In Giant Space Amoeba.
Yeah.
So
like,
it
I felt
wasn't
it in
there
the Force at a moment.
Yeah, wasn't there something about that happening where the races found it initially in the the canon from earlier, where they found it difficult to interact or difficult to work with each other because of cultural norms or climate or any of those things, that by Deep Space Nine, and you saw some of that with the race, the amphibian race in TNG with the breather, right? They talked about how they were becoming more open. Sorry, was that?
Benzites.
Benzites.
The ones with the vapes.
So I think there's some canonical references to isolation of the races in the early, because I guess the early formation of the Federation, and that when they did overlap, it was because the people really wanted to have that experience, but usually they stayed separate. Am I misrepresenting that?
No, that seems to be how it was represented in TOS, but it's
Yeah.
only kind of prefaced off that one thing about Spock saying that there was a whole crew of Vulcans. I don't
Right.
think there's any other reference.
Okay. Because that would maybe explain why there's so many kind of that there's diversity within the human crews, right?
Yeah.
But there's not a diversity of the species represented within the Federation. So I think that's where there's opportunity for us to continue to pull in species and cruise ships. That's maybe why later on we see far more of the crew or far more of the people who are on the space station or whatever they're from different species.
Right, like where Strange New Worlds sits in the timeline is fairly young in the Federation, and
Right.
they just simply don't have like it's odd to like call folks alien when you're on a spaceship. Like who's an alien in that context, really? Like, but yeah, it's mostly. It doesn't surprise me that it's mostly human.
Right. And that's
Hey,
why
Coach G.
in the reboot, the movie reboots, you saw far more alien present with Zachary Quinto, right? That series.
Mm-hmm.
Those three. You saw, what was that little monster beasts?
Franklin?
Keenser.
Yeah. So the ones that attacked him at the beginning of
right.
the last of Beyond, right?
The Faboni or something like that.
Yeah, and then suddenly at the end of the movie, he's walking around in a uniform, like, hey, first contact, and then he's in a uniform walking around. It's like, okay.
But also, like, Jayla joined Starfleet in the course of that film as well.
True, but she was admitted to the academy.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, it's just there's opportunity for established contact or a species to be present, like the Tellarites, because that was already established. They'd already been met, interacting earlier, same as the Andorians, and of course the Vulcans. And there are other ones as well, but I would like to see some of those characters present, or represented as returning characters, humanoid, perhaps, right? Perhaps, but non-human diversity.
I think Bob, commenting in the chat, agrees with you. Says he's glad to see an Andorian in the cast.
Yeah.
What do you think Captain Pike's captaining style would be based on what you've seen so far in Discovery? Like, how do you think he would approach like difficult situations or difficult choices? Because I can sort of take a guess, but I'd like to hear what other folks have to say.
I think there's an aspect to his character where he's like always struggling to an extent, and coming to terms with things. Like even in the cage, where he's like tired out from the mission before we see him, and clearly, like, that's been revealed in the promotional material for Strange New Worlds. He's still like trying to overcome the premonition, basically, and the realization that he had of seeing himself in the wheelchair and the disaster that will take place.
Yeah, that's going to be something to deal with. Like, you'd see a lot of things about like soldiers dealing with PTSD. He has stress over a trauma that hasn't even happened yet.
I think we're going to see a more conservative command style. It's not going to be the Kirk in the Old West. Just do what you need to do, pick up the babe of the week, and there's your plot. I think you're going to see him take more measured and controlled command decisions.
This is what Pike in season 2 of Discovery was one of the. I really enjoyed watching him, the actor, embody that character, and I'd like to see more of that guy, the leader who's a leader because he doesn't demand respect, but has earned respect because he gives respect and he holds people accountable, but not to an unbelievable standard. Doesn't just say, I expect you all to be here and there's no way you can match it, but that's what you should shoot for. He says, no, his style is, this is what we understand about each other. This is what we're going to be doing together. Let's do it. And everyone pulls their weight. I like that kind of guy. And he does strike me, the way he portrayed him. He found some light moments, some levity, so that it wasn't all, strict to the guns. And what was that episode title where they beamed down to the planet and the church?
Oh, I know which one you're talking about, but I
Terra Nova?
That was...
Oh, that's Enterprise.
There was some fantastic moments in that episode where you saw the humanity of Pike and the decision-making of Pike and the self-sacrifice of Pike. That's the kind of the guy that I hope they write him as.
I remember the name of the... Yeah, that's it, thanks. I was remembering the name of the planet, Terra Elysium, but I couldn't remember the episode name. But yeah, I thought he was great in that episode, and you reminded me, when he comes aboard Discovery and does take charge in that sort of way. He's like, this is the mission we've got. It's gonna be happening, and shows them all his service record and everything.
Go ahead, Dustin.
That episode also showed us what's probably the only Christian in Star Trek. I mean, when he goes into the church, he makes sure he asks everybody, have you ever been in a church before? And it seems like he's got that godliness about him. You know what I mean? Where we don't really see religion portrayed for most human people in the future.
Well, apparently, his father taught comparative religion. That's what he says. And also, we do see a chapel in Balance of Terror in the original series aboard the Enterprise.
But he holds faith with a reverence, right? That he may not be, and I don't know if we learn anything about his particular faith, but he appreciates that other people have faith, and and the characters seem to respect that. And to me, that is a sign of someone who has a deep appreciation of what other people believe and understands how that can shape their worldview and their approach to things. So he's got this very professional, measured approach to command, but he's also got some qualities that I think set him up to be a really good character for the franchise. The actor being really good as representing that character.
I honestly hope that he's not entirely 100% even-handed and making measured decisions every single time, because that would not necessarily be a compelling watch. Look at this person do a good job. Isn't he great? I hope we get a little bit of, those choices not necessarily being the best ones. Some of my favorite Star Trek episodes are episodes where the captain is actually making a decision that I don't agree with. Like in Deep Space Nine when Sisko shot that planet. I didn't agree with that.
Yeah.
I really hope that we get something that makes us, question, is he firing on all cylinders? Is he actually looking at this objectively, or is he taking his bias? Is his personal feelings getting in the way of making a clear choice? Is a bias a personal piece of baggage, against a certain party? playing into it. So I hope we get a bit of texture there.
Yeah, they did that, I think, in season 2 of Discovery with his character. They gave him texture. They gave him, you know, he had to wrestle with some choices, and you could see that playing out. That's what I mean by I hope that they create that measured professional approach. He has a structure he has to follow, but he still has to be. He has to have some errors in his thinking. He has to. That's the conflict that the character's on. And if he's wrestling with that PTSD because of what he's discovered about himself, he could become risk-taking, you know?
Yeah, that's another thing.
So
I
that's
was
the
curious
balance.
about. Like, is he gonna, is there gonna be a bit of like carelessness because he's, he knows he's going to perish very soon.
And
Sorry.
I was just gonna say, and I'm hoping number one is that sober voice in his ear that just calls bullshit, right?
Yeah.
I hope that's the character that they don't. In the original series, it was Kirk Spock. I'm hoping it's Pike number one. I'm hoping that's that relationship where they share kind of like that back and forth, and she just says in a very that no nonsense kind of matter of fact manner, bullshit. But okay, we'll go ahead and do it.
But I think among the Star Trek fandom, like the choices that captains have made and struggled over have been like some of the most long-lasting, and most controversial over time. Because like I was thinking about like Tuvix with Janeway, for example, like it's still talked about so much these days, and it was decades ago when the episode aired.
And that episode that you were referring to in Deep Space Nine, where at the end of the episode, he's talking to the camera, right? Like he's talking to the recording, but he's talking to the camera, and I'm okay with that. He says it a few times, repeating it almost like he's letting it settle in, trying to convince himself. Beautiful, beautiful moments. Absolutely.
And then he eventually says that delete the entire record.
Right.
That calls back to something that I've been thinking about. One of the things that has made those darker episodes, like in the Pale Moonlight, the best or one of the best episodes of Trek, is that there's so much light Trek to compare it to and contrast to. But modern Trek so far has been really just dark. We don't have a hopeful, nice, fun future that we've seen through like TNG. And I'd really like to see more light storytelling than just let's go as dark as possible down this Paramount Plus rabbit hole.
But that's also... Sorry, Scott?
Sure, Lower Decks. You are absolutely correct. But it's a whole different animal from the live action series.
I think if they do it in Strange New Worlds, it might be compared to the Orville quite a bit.
We'll see.
I was just going to say, building on what you just said, Dustin, that's again kind of symbolic of the times we live in, right? We're living in darker, less upbeat, less positive times, and the shows that we watch or the shows that are produced are representative of that, right?
But like the original series was like created and aired in quite dark times.
Right. Didn't it air just after Kennedy was assassinated?
In 1963, and also like during the Vietnam War, and there's fears about nuclear stuff.
Right, but it was produced in the gap between Korea and Kennedy and Vietnam, right? So there was a little bit of a golden era, a golden time in there where things were very upbeat and uplifting. And I think again, from an anthropological perspective, if you were to look at media as representative of the era in which it was produced, right, it would be a good study to look at and consider all these different levels of Star Trek and the eras in which they were produced.
Well, I think it will be interesting and good to see how Strange New Worlds compares. Thanks to the panelists for joining this discussion. We hope you, our viewers, have enjoyed it. Let us know in the comment section what your hopes are for Strange New Worlds. Please remember to like and subscribe to the video, and we'll see you next time. Track you later.